It all started when a man named Eric moved into an old house. It wasn't fancy, just an old, run-down place he bought on a tight budget. It had peeling wallpaper, creaky floors, and drafty windows that let in the cold night air. But Eric didn't mind. He was looking for a fresh start. The previous owner didn't leave much behind, except for some old furniture and scattered junk in the basement. On his first night in the house, Eric sat in his living room, sipping coffee, listening to the wind whistle through the cracks in the windows. The house felt empty, lifeless. But for some reason, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Eric wasn't the type to believe in ghosts, curses, or anything remotely paranormal. He figured the weird feeling was just nerves. It was a new place, after all. But soon after moving in, something strange caught his attention. While moving boxes into the basement, he noticed a door on the far side of the room. It was different from the others. Old, heavy, and bolted shut with large rusted metal latches. There was no handle, no keyhole, just thick bolts that looked like they hadn't been touched in decades. At first, he didn't think much of it. Probably just an old storage room, he muttered to himself, brushing off the sense of unease creeping up his spine. But the more he thought about it, the more it bothered him. Why would someone go through the trouble of bolting a door shut from the outside? What were they trying to keep locked away? Days passed, but Eric couldn't stop thinking about that door. He tried to ignore it, telling himself it didn't matter. Yet every time he went down to the basement, his eyes would be drawn to it, like the door was silently calling out to him. He could feel his curiosity gnawing away at his mind. You know how it is. Once something doesn't make sense, it sticks with you. Eventually, he couldn't take it anymore. He had to know what was behind that door. One cold evening, armed with a crowbar, a hammer, and a flashlight, he made his way down to the basement. The air down there was damp, and the smell of mildew hung heavy in the air. As he approached the door, a strange silence seemed to settle over the room. Even the creaking of the house above had stopped. He took a deep breath, gripping the crowbar tightly. The bolts were old and rusted, and it took him nearly an hour to loosen them. They didn't come off easily, resisting his every effort as if they didn't want to be removed. Sweat dripped down his forehead as he pried off the final bolt. Finally. With one last creak, the door swung open. When he opened the door, a cold draft hit him in the face. It was pitch black inside. His flashlight flickered as he shined it into the room. The air was thick, heavy, and stale, like the room hadn't been opened in years, maybe decades. Inside, he found a small, empty room. No furniture, no windows, just 4 bare walls, and strange markings drawn all over them. The symbols didn't look familiar. They weren't letters, not any language he recognized. It was like someone had painstakingly carved ancient runes into the walls, their meaning lost to time. He ran his fingers over the strange markings, feeling the rough texture of the stone beneath. They felt cold to the touch, almost unnaturally so. For a moment, he considered taking a photo, but something stopped him. He didn't want to spend any more time in that room than he had to. Just as he turned to leave, something on the floor caught his eye. A small wooden box, tucked neatly into the corner of the room. It was old, its surface cracked and covered in a thick layer of dust. It didn't look special, but something about it felt wrong. Eric hesitated. His instincts screamed at him to leave it alone, but curiosity won out once again. Slowly, he knelt down and picked up the box. It was surprisingly light. With a trembling hand, he opened it. Inside the box was a single piece of paper, folded neatly. No trinkets, no valuables, just that old, yellowed note. Frowning, Eric unfolded the paper. The handwriting was faded, almost too faint to read, but the message was clear. Whatever you do, do not open the door. Eric froze. His heart pounded in his chest as a cold dread settled over him. He turned around, flashlight trembling in his hand. He was ready to leave, but just as he took a step forward, he heard it. Footsteps. They were soft at first, but unmistakable. Someone, or something, was moving behind him. He wasn't alone. Panic took over. Without looking back, he sprinted out of the room, slamming the door shut behind him. He bolted it back as quickly as he could, his hands shaking so badly it took him several tries. Once it was secure, he stumbled back upstairs, heart racing, breath coming in short gasps. But it didn't matter. From that night on, things were different. He started hearing noises at night, footsteps in the basement, soft whispers that seemed to come from behind the walls. And sometimes, when he glanced at the basement door, he thought he saw shadows moving underneath it. He tried to tell himself it was just his imagination, that he was tired, stressed, maybe even hallucinating. But deep down, he knew the truth. He had opened something that was never meant to be opened. Eric tried to sell the house, but no one wanted to buy it. Maybe it was the strange atmosphere. Maybe it was something more. Either way, he was stuck. He still lives there today. And that door, it's still bolted shut. But every night, he hears something behind it. And every night, it gets a little closer. So, what do you think Eric unleashed? Was it just his imagination? Or did he awaken something that had been trapped for years? Let me know what you think in the comments below. Like and subscribe.